Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Today's guest is Natalie Wilson, founder and managing director of Workwear Solutions International. Natalie spent more than 20 years working across the uniform, workwear, and PPE supply chain. She actually began her career on the supply side, responding to tenders and trying to understand what buyers were actually asking for before moving across the table to support organizations with technical specifications, procurement, product assessment, and wearer trials. Natalie's work now spans some of the most demanding working environments imaginable, including fire, policing, defence, transport, and aviation. She's also the leading voice in inclusive PPE. She chaired the British Standards Institution committee that developed BS 30417, the world's first inclusive PPE standard, and now helps lead the development of this work at a European level. Our conversation today is really important because the equipment and clothing we wear are not simply purchasing decisions. They affect our safety, movement, comfort, physiological performance, and ultimately our ability to do the job properly. Across the UK Fire and Rescue Service specifically, many of the people who have spent decades building specialist knowledge around PPE and procurement are retiring. And in too many cases, that experience is leaving without a proper handover or even a development pathway for the people replacing them. Globally, firefighters and emergency responders need people who understand not only what equipment meets the standard, but whether it is genuinely suitable for the task, the environment, and the person wearing it. This is essential CPD, because in this episode, Natalie's going to help us understand how we ask better questions, identify what our people actually need, and make safer, better informed procurement decisions. I'll see you on the other side. So you've worked both sides of the fence. I remember before we started, you said starting working with suppliers and trying to understand the difficulties in building a relationship, using the same language with the people who were buying in procurement. Mm-hmm. Give me the sort of insights into working both sides of that, what it was like to start with and where you started with suppliers, and then learning some of the development that needed to take place, maybe industry-wide.
Yeah, so I started in the industry 20 years ago and was part of the supply chain, worked in all kinds of different roles and across lots of different sectors as well in terms of like client base. So I was involved in trying to win tenders and going through the procurement process from the supplier side. And then when I set up Workwear Solutions 10 years ago, the original intention for that was helping suppliers to win tenders. So helping them to respond and trying to understand like all the requirements from the clients that were in the tender process. And it's like some of the frustrations that came along with that around, not being able to engage with the buyers ahead of time and feeling sometimes like things were maybe kind of going towards the incumbent, whereas I don't know that was intentional, but it kind of felt like that sometimes with timelines or requirements that were being put in.
Well, in the absence of any communication with them or any clarity, because obviously there's rules around the procurement stuff, but you find yourself shooting in the dark, and if there's total silence, you start putting your own assumptions into it and going, well, this sounds exactly the same like what you're already doing.
Yeah,
some people don't know what they're asking for because sometimes they don't know what the language is because they haven't been trained in these areas.
Yeah, and a lot of the time people are asking for what they've always had, and that isn't necessarily state of the art. It isn't necessarily reflecting on.
There's a heavy recency bias, and we're so traditional and romantic in the first responder sectors. We're very much, it's the way it's always been done.
Yeah, and also I think there's a real kind of risk aversion to it, because if you have come into a procurement role and nobody's been injured wearing the kit that you've got now, and you put something different in and somebody gets injured, that's on you and that's your decision-making process. So I understand why there's like, a hesitancy to kind of change or to move. Like I get
I remember hearing Simon Sinek say, no one ever gets fired for buying Apple. As in, if you were an IT lead and you said, we're going to go Apple, everyone would be like, great decision. Great decision. Because it's a great product, and no one's gonna, but if you said, hey, I found this new startup in the whatever country and they're doing something really cool and it's a way better product, and you're like, well, that's a gamble, mate. Like, why don't we stick to Microsoft? Because everyone knows that.
Everyone knows what you've got. They do, and I think it's very, very true. And I think we see that. So sort of switching over onto the buyer side kind of happened about just over 4 years ago when we won our first contract with the Irish Defence Forces. So we're their technical consultant for basically everything they wear. And we do a lot of the kind of difficult and dangerous stuff. So military, police and fire are our key sectors, really. And we do lots of other like transport and aviation, and there's lots of crossovers that you wouldn't expect necessarily. But that's our real speciality. And when I went over onto that buyer side, I realised how much education was needed for the buyers, and that it explained a lot of the issues. So one of the first examples we had was, first of all, the client saying, we just get terrible responses from suppliers. And I'm like, well, let me have a look. So this is how the procurement side of what we were doing started, because we were intended to be brought in as a technical consultant only. That was really what our primary goal is in there, and with other clients. And when I looked at the questions they were asking, I thought, okay, I'm quite experienced at responding to tenders, and I know this client and what they want, and I have no idea how to respond to these questions. And so we went through a whole process where we rewrote all of the questions, and were able to then deep dive on some of the things around supply chain and risk management within the supply chain, and what are the processes for quality, whether you're buying a commercial off-the-shelf item of PPE or whether you're manufacturing it directly. So bringing that really was quite revolutionary, and we've done that with all of our clients, is to really kind of bring that. And the other thing was the general lack of understanding of some of the challenges within the supply chain. So one of the first examples we had, they were giving the supply chain 8 weeks to provide 144 samples. And that 8 weeks included Christmas and Chinese New Year. So I said to them, anybody who's looking at this will think you just want your incumbent, because even they're going to struggle to do it, but they could, if they've got some stock. And then they had 17 weeks to do the internal evaluation. I was like, lads, we've got this the wrong way round. You've got to give proper time. And so we've been able to really influence giving enough time. So we say a minimum of 16 weeks if you've got something completely bespoke, because we know the challenges within factories and how difficult it is. And also, those 144 products weren't necessary, because if you're making a pair of trousers in 4 different colours, it doesn't matter. I just need to see them in one colour to know that you can make a pair of trousers. And so we're really trying to bring some of that sensibility into the sort of general procurement
this relates so much to when I'm hearing about. So when I always think about the podcast, I always think about the universe ignores vague wishes and responds to specific asks. If you ask a better question, and I have to try, because we're always, maximum amount of time that we sort of do on episodes, and I'm like, ask a better question, and you'll unlock the answers that you need in the people. And it sounds like it was totally a language piece, because I do hear it from new people in procurement when they're castaway comment, when they get something back from a supplier. They're like, I could go to a shop in London and get 100 pairs of gloves tomorrow. And you're like, because you've got this unconscious conditioning that you think you're going to Tesco's or B&Q.
You're going shopping.
You'll think you're going shopping for, there's 1,000 spades in bloody B&Q. I could go to Travis Perkins tomorrow. And you're like, but that's not what we're doing here, is it? That's not what this is.
No.
Do you know what I mean? And it's but also, just to add the layer, and I don't know if you found it, up to my knowledge, I can't think of anyone I've come across working in procurement in a first responder sector with an operational background who came into the job with an aspiration to do that job. It's sometimes something they get as an unknown sort of assignment, as a promotion thing. A lot of them want to stay ops. So when you meet them and they go, you know what, Natalie, I've been a police officer for 25 years. Natalie, I've been a firefighter for 18 years, whatever. And you're like, and you maybe like other people in your sector go, well, Jesus, this person's an expert. They must know exactly what they're talking about. But even when it comes to the actual job of firefighting, for us, our comprehension of physics and chemistry is not as far as people think it would be for someone that just uses the tools and does a job. Some of it's very, very technical. But do you know what I mean? I don't think they've not done what you've done, or other people such as you who have spent a couple of decades in this sector. And they love it and they're very good at it. But I think we struggle to attract that top talent into our organisations, and sometimes we also can't afford it because you pay peanuts, you get monkeys sometimes.
Well, I think there's 2 things. The first thing is, you can't expect an operator to be able to understand to have to understand the product and all of the standards to be able to say to procurement, this is exactly what we need and the reasons why. And from a procurement perspective, like, I don't really know any procurement expert in the public sector who is a procurement expert on uniforms and PPE, and that is their role. They're also buying appliances, the
vehicles,
new
fleet, equipment, everything,
pencils, and so actually that's genuinely where we fit into the equation, because we take that like operational wish list of these are the things that are going wrong with what we've got now or what we really like, and translate that into a way that procurement can then go out to market and get it. And they're the procurement experts, but because we understand the procurement process, we can advise the technical requirements and build the specifications to meet the standards properly, so that when you go to market, you can you can be compliant in what you're asking for. So we've done a lot of work on that. We've seen some specs that there were test methods that expired about 7 years before the last version of the spec was issued. And it was like,
there's some very archaic test methods in fire. Very archaic. And there's a couple of brands that have they've put money into developing their own test methods because they're so frustrated with the old ones.
Yeah.
But obviously there's other brands that thought, well, you've come up with that, so but that works really well for
yours. You
yours.
can't be asking for that. No, it's a really difficult one.
It is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefights podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behavior, firefighter health, cancer risks, incident debriefs, and so much more. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes.
And I think the other thing is that public sector hasn't been very good at succession planning. So if you went back like 10, 15 years
Not been very good.
Ago,
We've been horrific. That's very polite and kind of you. We have been horrific in every factor.
Yeah.
Leadership, skills, qualifications, you name it. We are reactive, unfortunately. As much as we like to tell people we horizon scan, that again requires mental capacity to horizon scan. And we're so busy doing figure eights on the productivity treadmill. We ain't got time to look at the next 10, 15 years. That's your job, Natalie.
and that's the thing. So, 10, 15 years ago, there were a lot of we referred to them as the lifers who'd been like the PPE manager for like 30, 40 years in a particular fire and rescue service or region. And they have then been replaced as they've retired by people who were being promoted and perhaps are really enthusiastic about procurement and really want to give it a go and have this operational view of what happens, which is super useful, by the way.
I'm going to get the guys and girls what they need and they've never had.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, that was what the last person wanted to do as well.
Yeah.
But that's what they were trying to do.
They did, but there's no crossover. So if that person has spent like 2 or 3 or 5 years
shadowing,
as like an apprentice almost, like learning the procurement process, then that would have
rather
helped.
than trying to get the password for their computer and shuffling through the drawers on day one to find out where
trying to work out
customers approved customer list is.
And then the quickest way for someone in that role to learn is to learn it from the suppliers. And there's some merit in that. However, there's also a lot of risk because it's the supplier telling you what the supplier
wants. Is there as many snake oil salesmen as there used to be?
Possibly answer that one.
Okay. Okay. But there used to be, certainly.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's the case. I think salespeople have had like quite a bad rep, and actually, like particularly into fire and kind of PPE, you've got technical people who are helping to sell, and I get that. However, every business has its own commercial need, and so the job of those people is to influence the specification for their product or a product similar to theirs, and that's again where we come in, because we don't supply to product. We don't supply any product. We don't have any commercial relationships with suppliers whatsoever. We are 100% on the buyer side of the table. We can work out, we can do a lot of the industry engagement and kind of help understand like what's the best in class now? What does that look like? How do you specify that using the standards? Because they're actually the minimum standard and you can spec over and above that. So it's understanding those
So go
things.
deeper on that one. So when someone says like a piece of PPE is compliant, what does that actually tell us? And also, how should people think differently about meeting a standard and being suitable for the actual task or in the environment, or the wearer for that matter?
Yeah. Well, I think you have to break it down in a few different areas. So first of all is you need to understand first and foremost who your wearers are, what they're doing, and what their risk assessment is and what they need. Every sector has to have risk assessments for each of the jobs that you do across the emergency services, whatever it is. What is often missing is the risk assessment on the PPE. So that means that you need to understand several things. One is that there's compliance to the standard. So each of the items of kit that you have has a certification level, so an EN standard that's linked to it. And then underneath that sit a whole raft of different test methods. So just for example, a really simple one, just for any, like not for PPE specifically, but colour fastness. So if you need to have colour fastness, there's lots of different ways you can test it. So you can do colour fastness to rubbing, colour fastness to washing, colour fastness to perspiration. So all of those different aspects.
Colour fasteners.
Yeah. So where you don't get like with dark colours in particular that it fades in as you wash it more, or if you're outside. So you don't want your station wear turning like pale blue because you've been stood out in
which
the sun.
It pretty much all does.
Yeah, and that's
90%. Depends how long you're guaranteeing it for as well.
Station wear is one of my biggest bugbears, and I'm just going to say this now because you spend as a fire and rescue service so much money investing in the really high-tech structural fire kit that you wear all the time, which is absolutely right. And then you put on whatever was the cheapest option when you tendered for it, for t-shirts and polos and shirts and trousers underneath it. And what you're doing is negating the benefits of the structural kit that you've spent so much money on, because it's either not working as a system and not allowing from the skin out that breathability, that kind of thing, or it's hindering it. So your trousers don't fit you properly, they're too baggy and they're rubbing against the structure.
I said this to somebody we work with. We work on our PPE that's got, physically dynamic and, all of these ergonomic elbow and knees and crotch. And then you put a pair of trousers underneath. As soon as you drop down to do a sweep and stamp, or you're trying to get in a neutral plane, you just rip the crotch out of them. I'm like, what's the point? Plus, you spend less than 10% of your time in that kit. Now, I know it's when you're doing the sexy sharp bit at the end of the spear, but you spend most of your time in the other stuff. And how you look and how you feel, your confidence, your comfort, they are all behavioural friction points that help you do your job well or not. You know what I mean? If you feel like you don't look good, you don't look professional, both for men and women, but especially for women as well. If I've got something that's ill-fitting and doesn't make me feel my best self when I'm at work, then it's gonna stop you being optimum.
If you think about it in like everyday life, if you're wearing something that doesn't fit you properly, you get agitated in it and you're kind of like fidgeting a bit. That's really distracting. And also it raises your body temperature because of the agitation. So when you think about that in terms of that happening underneath your structural kit while you're in a really high risk environment, your station wear is now becoming a risk to your physiological and psychological state. And so I think it's like I say, it's a big bugbear of mine because I don't think that it's considered as anywhere near to the extent that it should be in terms of what it can do if it performs properly and well, how much more operationally efficient that can make.
I am so deep down that rabbit hole because we had a bit of a conversation before about efficiency, behavioral friction, productivity around life. My bags and my personal trousers, my personal boots that I wear, that for me, in the life that I live, I do a lot of travel. I need pockets to do the right things. I need the right amount of stuff, but not too much. I don't want to travel and put something in the hold every time. Traveling and being a person that works in lots of locations and does a lot of that, you have to get really, really, or you end up getting really, really good at knowing what causes regular small friction points. And you go, I need a pen that's actually about 2 centimeters smaller than this one because it's annoying. I want one that does this and I want one that does that. And it's possible to find all of those things now. in so many different variations. But that's if we cared enough, if we cared as much about other people's things as we did about our own things, then I'm sure it would really reframe that. Because, like you say, I remember seeing there was a military brand I was looking at a little while ago, and they were doing something with the pockets on the trousers, and it was about them not getting dog-eared. And they were like, when you're moving past walls and when you're moving close to things, they always dog ear up at the end. So we've done this or we've done that. And it was one of those things that you'd never really thought about. But so I think there's some things that you hadn't thought about that when you realize it, you're like, I definitely need it. But I remember an example of, do you know what the Dyson Air multiplier is? The bladeless fan thing. That's an example of a product or a company that created a need that you didn't know you needed, and then gave you a solution to the problem you didn't even think you had, where they were like, you know how annoying buffeting is from a fan? And people are like, no, I've never even thought about it. Well, it's really annoying, isn't it? And now I've solved the solution for you. And I don't know that was anything we ever needed.
Yeah,
because I've not got it. I don't own one. We're not sponsored by them. I don't own one. But although some people are like, yeah, you're right, I haven't got to tolerate that anymore. But so sometimes these are performative innovations that maybe you don't really need. So how do we differentiate between the ones that are genuinely adding value and ones that are just compliant? Today's episode is proudly supported by PBI. For over 40 years, PBI has been trusted and proven in the fire service, protecting what matters most, firefighters. PBI develops high-performance protective fabrics designed for the realities of the fire ground, with a focus on flame resistance, low thermal conductivity, break-open protection, durability, and comfort. Because when conditions change quickly, your PPE has to do more than just look the part. It has to perform again and again under heat, stress, wear, and real operational use. We're incredibly proud to partner with PBI because their work sits exactly where this podcast lives. Firefighter safety, education, innovation, and helping crews better understand the protection they really rely on every single day. To learn more, visit PBI Products and explore the science behind the fabrics protecting firefighters around the world. Let's get back to the show.
So I think the first thing is breaking down, like, where are the points of failure now? That's the big question that we ask. So we're doing that with a station wear contract at the minute with one of our clients, and saying, like, where does that break down? How does that? What happens when when you're wearing this? What happens when you wear it with the other? And you think about them in conjunction, because you guys are wearing this stuff in conjunction all the time. So you really need to think about that instead of thinking about individual pieces or just the price of one thing. Thinking about the cost over the life of it. So when you're talking about standards, so there's several things that we always ask for, and I think it's been a bit of an eye-opener to industry when we've been asking this, because I know what they have to produce in order to get certification. We can ask for certain things. So we're saying, if you're claiming, for example, your breathability is higher than a class 4, which is the highest performance you can have, show me what that looks like. Give me your test report as well as the certificate that says you've certified that waterproof garment and it meets class 4 for breathability. So we can ask for the certificate.
It's for the top, because isn't one of them like pure polyester or something, isn't it? Because like you look at Adidas or Nike or some sportswear, the stuff they're wearing in tennis or whatever, that's like max breathability, isn't it?
Yeah. So
we obviously can't achieve that with certain things.
Yeah, no, you can't achieve it with certain things. But how the standard works, and this happens with most standards, is that you can meet the standard to various different levels. So, for example, high visibility is a really straightforward one. So you can have class 1, 2, or 3 high visibility. So class 1 might be just like a basic high vis vest, for example, with no sleeves. That would be a class.
Buy it from the market. It'll reflect if a light comes on it. The car's coming towards it.
Don't buy it from the market. But yes, you're right.
yeah. Not for the job. Most builders out there will probably get one off the market.
I am not endorsing buying these from market stores. The next thing would be like, so the next level then is class 2, and that might be something like a long sleeve soft shell jacket might meet class 2. So something like that's high visibility or fully high vis, or and then a class 3 is something that goes down to your wrists or your ankles. So it could be a waterproof jacket could meet it. It's the different standards are based on the amount of conspicuous fabric and the amount and configuration of reflective tape. So that's where you can kind of...
Why is there not another level where there's the because there was a company we spoke to ages ago. I can't remember who they are, and I wouldn't say them if I did, because we're not doing that today. But they created it's a bit like jellyfish technology. Like, it gets UV for a little while, and then it
technology.
Phosphorescent. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it doesn't meet various standards, or I don't think it was even in a standard.
It doesn't meet any standard. Because all it does is enhance a standard, but there's no testing for that. There hasn't been. There's some work going on in Europe around smart tech, and that might be part of it.
The lived experience of it when you see it, my God, you can't deny that is wicked.
No, I used to manufacture it. I used to manufacture high-vis product with it, which is why I know.
I genuinely didn't know that before this recording.
No, I know that, and it was just one of the components that.
Because when you see a police officer or a firefighter go from light into dark, that is one of those eureka moments. You go, oh my God, I need it.
Yeah,
it's
it's because of the way that the standard is currently tested. As long as that doesn't cover up too much of the bright yellow or orange fabric, it's sort of a component that enhances but isn't tested as part of that process.
I think people would love that.
Yeah, but that's an example where if that's what you wanted, you could.
I think if everybody saw it, they'd want it.
Class 3 plus that technology as well. So that would be one where you'd have to have it not as that would have to be an additional requirement. It's not in line with the standards. So I
certainly think for like railway workers or road workers, that's got to be wicked.
Yeah. It's interesting. We spoke to Network Rail about it about 10 years ago, and or maybe 8 years ago, and they were concerned that because it has a slightly green hue, that it would be confused as a go signal for train drivers. So So there's lots of that. Again, that's a really good example of where buyers can be educated on different things and how it affects them and stuff. So.
How do we test the compliance? Sorry, Karen. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say the other thing is the other documentation that you should ask for as part of your due diligence. So, so you've got your certificate that says it's been certified by an approved test house or a notified body, depending.
How do you know if it's an approved test house? Because I've heard stories of places that have been written on things, and then you speak to someone like you or some of the other people, and they're like, that place is not even approved. They've just written a name there, and you don't know that it's not.
So Europe, for anything that's certified, the European Union has something called the NANDO database, and you can go onto it, and it will tell you by country and by type. So not everyone is they'll have lots of approved or notified bodies that can test for certain things, but they can't all do PPE, and so that's where you can go to cross-check that is.
So if someone's like, well, this is my test centre, and I suppose that test centre, some of them may or may not declare that, well, we can test it for you, but it won't stand for anything. But they might still charge people to test them for it. And
so they can test it. So we always ask for ISO 17025, I think, off the top of my head. So that's an ISO sort of an international standard for quality of testing. So we would always specify that someone needs to ask for that reference if that's what they're using as test houses, because there are test houses all over the world. So you can have a completely valid test report that could be from China or Bangladesh or Pakistan or Thailand. Just depends on what's been tested. But you would have to provide a technical file as a supplier. You have to provide a technical file which comprises a specification, all the details of where the raw materials are being sourced from, all of the test reports that show that fabric meets the high visibility standard in terms of the chromaticity, all of that stuff. So that all has to be provided as part of the certification process. So it's only the people who are certifying product that would be listed on the NANDO database, but they will be checking independent test reports from them. So we would never accept factory fabric mill test reports, because they're internal test reports, and you can't mark your own homework and then put it in PPE. So we have to do that. But there's other things like declarations of conformity. So that is where the manufacturer is saying, we certified this product in 2022, we've made it again in 2026, and it is still conforming to everything that we submitted in the first instance. So we haven't changed anything. It's still compliant to that standard.
Is there an argument as well, though, and I might misquote this, but I was reading, so the NFCC, I think, said their own national specification that like BS, EN standards alone don't guarantee protection. They will not necessarily provide the protection. And I think they gave an example of like dedicated particulate flash hoods in the new framework. And they were saying like one of the old EN standards only covers heat and flame and not particulate protection, or filtration, sorry. So that's an example where the standards alone don't necessarily guarantee the protection. And also, why is there so many different standards internationally? Is my concern. Like,
yeah, that's a difficult one. So anything that
we can ignore that question if you like. I know that's a massive question. That might require its own episode.
It's okay. I think in principle, if you're looking at a standard and it has just sort of a bit of education. So ISO is the International Standards Organization. EN is anything that's approved in Europe, and then BS is when it's adopted into the UK, essentially.
I might sound stupid here, but we're not in the EU anymore, so do we care about EN standards?
We do. We still use them. So they're all designated standards, and we've introduced them into UK law, so they're still valid. So we're still really heavily involved in European standards making and sort of helping. So it's still valid. What if you are asking for, if you see a standard that has ISO directly next to the numbers, and then EN, and then BS. It means that the standard originated in ISO at international level. If it's a BS EN, it originated in Europe and it's been adopted into the UK.
Does that matter?
It's just so that
if it's ISO, is it better because everyone says it's good?
Not necessarily. Standard? Okay. And actually, it can be the reverse actually, because it's more difficult to get consensus on an international state.
I bet there's significantly more easier movement in redoing like a British standard than an ISO standard.
In theory, so like the BS.
We struggle a lot with localism and silo-ins here in the UK, though, even though we're so small.
Yeah, no, I think it's more that so it's more to do with the way that standards are made, and that we can't just in the UK create a standard if there's already a European version of it. We have to, and we can't necessarily even it's a bit complicated, the process. We've kind of learnt that through a few of the bits of standards work that we've done. We've done a really unusual piece recently. So the
MSA are supporting us on today's podcast, and I chose to partner with them because I've been wearing this stuff for nearly 20 years, and they are the global leader in development, manufacture and supply of incredible, safe products that really protect people, not just our communities out there, but also first responders, most importantly, all over the world. Get yourself over to MSA and have a look at it. The high performance protective clothing for emergency services responders. They also partner with us on the UK Pink Firefighters. It's because we love them. The helmets with the reflective visor, the F1XF, absolutely epic helmet. And not forgetting how they improve firefighter safety through their connectivity in the connected firefighter platform. MSA are always pushing the envelope, and it's a real privilege to be able to continue to grow our partnership together. So whether it's your PPE, your bunker gear, your helmets, your SCBA, your thermal imaging, your Luna, or your portable gas detection, both of us know that this equipment needs to work. It needs to be high quality, reliable, and dependable in the moment. And that's why I use MSA, because they know what's at stake.
BS 30417 inclusive PPE standard, that was created as that was created as a UK standard. So I chaired that committee, and now I'm responsible for writing the European version, and they're adopting the 90% plus of what we had in the British standard has been adopted into the European one, and that's quite unusual. We don't usually get to influence in, we're usually reviewing back. So it's really
why was there such a need for that? Am I right in saying, I think I read recently something like 86% of women's hands don't fit the smallest tested gloves in the UK Fire and Rescue Service? Is that true?
Yeah, it's true, but it's not just Fire and Rescue Service. It's the smallest hand size that's tested in safety gloves. So whatever industry you're in, if you've got a safety glove, it's the smallest hand size. So what we're doing with the inclusive PPE side is, first of all, it's the British guide. If you haven't already downloaded it, it's free. It can be downloaded anywhere. We've had over 3,500 downloads and across 70 different.
Can you give us a link for that? We'll stick it below this.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we'll put some stuff below this.
And there's a companion guide as well that you
Okay,
can
perfect.
that you can use that helps people understand how to actually implement it. And it's really designed to help you go through the whole process, from how are you selecting product, how are you engaging with your workforce, how are you ensuring that it continues to meet requirements on an ongoing basis, and also ensuring that you're challenging your supply chain, I guess, to offer enough of a range of products to suit what you need. But on the other side of it, there's issues around the test methods and things that you've spoken about. So there's one of the helmet test requirements uses something called the Sheffield heads, and that's because they literally have got 6 people in Sheffield at whatever time, 1 woman, 5 men, and they measured all their heads, and that's how it was created.
I love it. You know what? I think about this sometimes when I read academic papers, and they go, 80% of people. You know who they're usually testing? The students.
Mm-hmm.
They're testing the same bulk of university students all get tested for these various academic things that we then write public reports on and change legislation. And I'm like, that is a group of people who are all in their early 20s or late teens, regularly doing these research things. You've got to acknowledge there's got to be some kinds of recency bias, local conditioning, all kinds of stuff going on there. And then we run out and go, 80% of women say this, 90% of men say that. And you're like, hang on a minute, where does the sample size come from? And they go, it was 6 people with heads in Sheffield. And you go, what?
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, we'll just test everyone to that. And that's used at European level as well. That's not just about British.
God.
But we find that a lot. So one of the biggest issues we have is that we don't know what the workforce looks like, because there isn't updated anthropometric data about, what people look like now. And so you've got, we've seen it in a lot more women are doing weightlifting, and so the shape of women's bodies is a bit different than it perhaps used to be. We're getting taller as women and broader.
We're getting healthier and fit. Mostly, I think there's a health and fitness trend in society, whether that's the CrossFit, the High Rocks world, people drinking significantly less. Lots of things have changed societally, like post-COVID. People's bodies have changed massively.
But there's also a generational impact on that, because it's not across the board, and so understanding what that looks like is really important to us as kind of like product developers, of like, how do we and when I say product developers, I mean specification writers. So how do we ensure that a broad enough like size range is being accommodated when we're asking someone to provide station wear trousers or structural kit, and how do you allow adaptation? And actually, there's also men who have got large chests, so whether that's like from doing so many presses or something, like whether it's that, and there are women who are slimmer and have less curves than other women, and so actually that's where the fit for form kind of idea has come from. And I don't know if you've seen that. So
I've seen a little about it, but I want to really, really unpick it. So I'll shut up and I want you to do a big piece on that, because I think that as much as we have spoken socially around inclusivity from a values perspective, it doesn't yet seem to have fully penetrated the end of the sausage machine, where the products are coming out to serve the people, whether that's equipment, procedures, PPE, uniform. Do you know what I mean? It hasn't gone full cycle through the system yet. We just seem to be talking about it largely from a let's not sexually harass each other and let's not be racist. And we're still kind of stuck on the bully and harassment side of inclusivity. We're not even thinking as much as we should be about how do we make an environment and a uniform and a whole system that is accessible and welcoming to anybody.
And actually operationally more efficient. Because if you're wearing kit that doesn't fit you properly, you aren't going to be as efficient as you could be.
Yeah,
and
100%.
It's just such a in many ways it's a really basic principle, but I understand why people are struggling with it. And I think when you talk about inclusive PPE, people are like, well, what does that mean? I've got to manufacture, well, I can't provide one piece of kit that's going to fit everybody. And it's like, you're absolutely right, you can't. So this is inclusive PPE. The definition of it in the standard is that it is about a range of products that collectively fit the entire workforce, And so sometimes you need to have them adapted, sometimes you need a slightly different product. And this is where it comes in as a procurement piece, because if you are looking at sole supply for a particular product and that supplier can't meet your needs, you should be going elsewhere to get those products. It shouldn't be the procurement process or the contract that defines how that product is purchased. Or what types of those products are purchased. So that's kind of one big thing around it. NFCC in their in the new collaborative framework talked a lot. They worked a lot with women in the Fire Service UK, and so we've spoken to them as well. And what they were saying, just as an example, what we're trying to do in the standard is to stop this differentiation for differentiation's sake. So, for example, there were a lot of suppliers who, when they first started doing female fit, did one of the most patronising things you can do and put a little flash of pink on it for us. Like, I'm a girl who likes pink, but like, that's not.
I'm a guy that likes pink, and even I thought that was a bit on the nose.
And do you know why they did it? Because it made it easier for people in stores to see if it was a female fit or a male fit or a unisex fit, which is male fit, by the way. And so that creates a point of difference. So if you're in a team of people and you are dressed slightly differently to everybody else, it's going to be obvious. And why do you want to create that othering within a team? That's the absolute opposite of what we're trying to do when we're coming together in crews and teams working together. And so I'm not sure if you know, but women's clothes open to the opposite side than men's. So if you've got
I love that bit. Share it. I love that bit. Go on.
The reason why
go on.
happens
this is great.
Is because back in the day when we were dressed by our ladies, it was easier for someone dressing you to do it the other way round. So I have never had someone dress me since my mum did it when I was a kid. But like the women in the Fire Service UK were saying, well, actually, if we opened the same side, A, you wouldn't see a difference, but B, opening the other way is causing a problem with our radios, or it's blocking a piece of equipment or doing something. So actually there was an operational reason to stop doing it.
And surely the supplier would love that.
Yeah, but this is where we have to talk about like the fit for form piece, because when we talk about what a big concern is that this is going to be a step back to unisex, and that is absolutely not the case and shouldn't be. It's about moving away from one size fits all or a unisex model that is built on the male form, which is what it always has been. So fit for form means that you can choose from that entire selection a product that fits you properly. And it doesn't matter whether you're male, female, identify as a cat, whatever it might be, it will fit you. And that's the whole point of it, is that you're not having to make a choice about, I have to choose this size because I'm a female or identify as a female, or I have to choose this size because I'm male. As I said, taller, slimmer women might find a traditionally male fit is actually better for them. And the same might be true.
But then they might feel a sense of embarrassment if the labeling is, I'm a woman wearing guys' clothes.
Yeah. Or if you're a guy wearing women's clothes.
I wear women's leggings sometimes, because when I go to the gym, like compression leggings and stuff, they just seem to fit me better because of the shape of my bum and my legs. I don't know why, but and there's also a much better range than there is for blokes' leggings, to be honest.
So we have the opposite problem in PPE. There's a much bigger range of men's stuff than women's stuff. So it is quite challenging, and I think there's that's really the crux of it, is that everybody has something that fits their body. And that's
it's not a case of necessarily apologising for it either. It's just acknowledging it, because you see this in pretty much all areas of society. And it's not saying we don't thank the men for the things they've done in the past, but they ended up writing a lot of the laws, a lot of the legislation, and it's written in all masculine terms and written predominantly for the vast majority of the people that were in the rooms then, which were men. That's not a bad thing as such back then. It's just the type of person that was getting stuff done because of the state of society. They were doing a different role. They were just doing that. We haven't got to apologise for that, but now we've just got to recognise that things have certainly changed, so we need to adapt with it. And then we need to look backwards and look at all of this and go, yeah, there was a massive unconscious bias going on here.
Yeah.
We just didn't realise it.
Yeah. And I think, that's true of so many of like the systems and processes and everything that kind of happens,
All the policies, everything. It's all written in that terminology, unknowingly, because people just didn't realise it at the time. How does a service know? Like, what are some of the warning signs that a service has got maybe a wider fit problem, whether it's with its uniform or its PPE, rather than just saying they've got a few individuals who are complaining about their kit? What are some of the warning signs that people need to really seriously consider a bit more?
I think it's understanding what your workforce looks like. And if you've got people saying they can't fit into product, like that's a problem. Like it doesn't really matter how many of them there are that are saying it. If you've got a problem, you've got a problem, whether it's for that individual and you need a solution for them, because there will be instances where there are people who are much broader or taller or smaller than the size range can accommodate. And so it's understanding what that looks like and making sure, again, in the procurement process that you're explaining what your expectations are around what your workforce are and what happens if you've got someone who doesn't fit within that. How do you accommodate that? Because that has to be accommodated. I think as an industry, if we're the reason that somebody can't do a job that they love or would love to do because we can't accommodate a particular size, then shame on us, frankly. And so
we've got to own that. It's our problem. Like, if our conversation was breaking down now, I always think about this communication. If someone says to me, like, I don't get, or they don't do something I'm asking them to do, or they don't do it the way I'm asking them to do it, I've got to own the fact that I haven't done my bit right. If our conversation is breaking down, I've got to take at least 50% accountability, or I've got to take more if I'm trying to facilitate a conversation. So even when I talk to people, I say, like, I don't feel like I've explained that very well. Am I explaining that very well? Rather than saying, do you understand? Because if you don't understand, well, you're stupid then. You obviously don't get it. You're the problem. That place is you. As I've explained it fantastically. Yeah. You are the problem. Like, I've done a great job at providing uniform and PPE. You are the problem. But if you see the fact that someone's saying this doesn't fit very well, or it's having this issue, or I'm having that issue with my skin, or it's chafing here, or it's causing an issue with this, you can't go, how are we dealing with this problem? We go, yeah, great. This is a learning experience. I've realized that either we're going to sack them all, which we already know is not what we want to do, because we want all of their ideas and that neurodivergence and that different life experience to solve the challenges that we need to move forward. So we've got to own this and put it on us. Like you say, I've failed in this conversation because we didn't get the answers that we wanted. Natalie clearly knew everything that I wanted, but we weren't getting there together. I was just going, it was a bloody difficult conversation, that was. And you're like, well, hang on a minute, Pete, you were part of it. You facilitated it. You invited us to have a conversation, for God's sake. William Wood Watches are back supporting the podcast, and honestly, it means a lot to me because this brand is built on real service heritage. Whether it's the melting down of the original 1920s British brass firefight helmets, and they also use upcycled fire hose on all of their straps. It's not just design, it's about the job, and it's built into every single component. I've been wearing them for 10 years now. Found them back in 2015, actually, and they've genuinely been a part of my daily kit ever since. I've got two. I've got the Valiant, and I've got the Chivalrous as well in Midnight Blue. But the thing about the brand, about William Wood Watches, it stands so different because of its story. Take, for example, their Dunkirk watch. That's not just a timepiece. It's actually built to honour the Massey Shore fireboat. I'll be honest though, the one I've got my eye on this year is the Fearless. It's more of like a field watch on the station, on the watch. It's a smaller 39mm case, compact, rugged, just feels right for the job. So you can actually get 10% off a William Wood Watch by using code FFPodcast. If you want to be part of the history and you want to wear it on your wrist, jump in the notes, check out William Wood Watches. Let's get back to the show.
I think that so one of the most disappointing things that I've heard recently is within the police sector, where there were a group of women who were saying they had problems with public order kit, and they went to procurement, and a female in procurement said, "Well, I don't think it's that much of a problem," and stopped the conversation. And the most frustrating thing is that it was a woman stopping other women from understanding what they need. But that has to be a conversation. And I think sometimes this is where, like, genuinely, like, where our role is quite interesting, because we can take that, like, wish list from the user and then explain to procurement how we can put that into a process for them. So it's not, and I suspect that for that particular individual, this was like a big problem that they didn't understand how to fix, and so they stopped it rather than saying, okay, right, if we've got a problem with this, let's think about how we solve it, and without saying whoever did it before got it wrong or all of those things. And that's what we like try and navigate.
I think that's sometimes the problem we get with promotional processes. Total segue for a second. But sometimes when we have people that have a valuable difference and they then suppress that difference and or try and assimilate to the old, like, if there's, in the male-female example, if there's three blokes interviewing a woman and the woman tries to assimilate and become more like that person that they're trying to be part of this new senior leadership group, and then the senior leadership group can go, hang on a minute, we have got a female on our group, she does lead on the procurement, but she has been conditioned to think exactly the same way as the rest of the group, and then she'll almost sometimes be rewarded for suppressing the troublesome lot that we're trying to create a difference in there. And they're saying, no, it's not a problem. I've spoke to them. They're one of my lot. I'm a woman as well. I've spoke to them. I've knocked them on the head. It's all right. They were just making a big deal out of nothing. No, and you're like, well, you don't do that. That's when your difference doesn't make a difference. I remember the women in the fire service said that at one of their conferences, and I was like, that's a banger. Like, we brought you in, whether it's culturally, whether it's, your language, your background, your upbringing, your shape, your size, your thought process. If you don't embrace and step into that difference, if you allow it to be suppressed, then the fact that you had a difference doesn't make an actual difference to the end. It's irrelevant because you're not bringing that to the forefront. That's what we want.
We do something similar. So I'm, as I think you'll know, but most people who know me know, I'm quite outspoken about things when I need to be. So I will always stand up for anything. If I hear things in our standards committees that I don't think's right, I'll call it out. Like, I'll sit in a European meeting and do the same thing, because until we start like pushing back against some of these things, then it's never going to be a comfortable place for people to be different. I was at a conference in Helsinki in May, and I did a presentation on inclusive PPE. It was to a group of European health and safety experts. And we were talking about like inclusivity in general. And at the end of it, there was a bit of Q&A. And then one guy stood up, and unluckily for him, I also had a microphone. And he stood up and said, I think I just want to say, all the men, let's stand up and applaud the women who are in standards. And there was a really awkward, couple of people that stood up. And I just said, and I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I was like, I appreciate that this has come from a point of kindness. However, what you've just done is alienate every woman in this room. We are here because we have a place here, not because we've been allowed here. And about 20 women afterwards were like, oh, thank you for interjecting in that. But I can't help myself.
They think it's acceptable to do that women. But if we said, let's stand up and clap for all the brave black people in the room, we'd be like, oh my God, did they just say that? Oh my God, did they just say that?
Yeah. And why?
They would never do that.
But yeah, it just boggles my mind a little bit. But that's what we have to do. And you talked about that sort of institutionalization of how
crazy.
Standards were built. And I talk about it as the ivory tower of standards. And I'm in there with my pickaxe, just knocking it down brick by brick. And, I've been a bit of a shock to the system for some of my European colleagues, I think, when in the committees that I've chaired, because everyone has a voice, and if I don't hear from someone for a while and I know that they usually would interject with something, I make sure that they're brought in and stuff. And I just won't let one dominant voice run it, because
I like doing that. Yeah. Because you're the brave person. You're like, you know what? I'd love, Sarah, give me your insight on this, because they wouldn't have done it themselves. But if you go, you know what? I think you did a piece of work on this. And then they'll go, well, yeah, I mean, I was going to say, but if you don't mind, I will but they wouldn't have done it if you hadn't have stepped in for them. Because they'd have just let it ride, they'd have missed their moment because they were being polite, and and then we moved on to another topic.
That's what allyship looks like.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about consistent levels of competence. So is there currently, I want to make this deployable again for people in the organizations, is there actually a clear and consistent level of competency expected for someone who's in those buying positions for whether it's police, ambulance, or UK Fire and Rescue Service? And what should they do if they recognize they don't have enough specialist knowledge internally to assess these products properly? Is there even a minimum level for people to get these? If they go into a job, they're like, well, you're in the job, but you can't become a buyer until you've done these qualifications or something?
Not necessarily, I don't think, but it depends on
the Wild West though, doesn't it?
I know. It depends on, there are things like SIPs, which is the can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's about professional procurement. And I know there are a number of procurement experts that have that. And
so
I
there are
think
courses they can go on, or a qualification they do, is
qualification.
it?
There's courses that people can go on.
Is it still relevant?
But
Does it get updated?
I think so. I don't know. I haven't been on it myself. I think there's also kind of informal courses you can do on the like the UK Procurement Act, because there were some changes that happened when that was implemented, rather than us working under the European Procurement Directive anymore. So there's like differences that people need to be aware of between like the two different types of regulation as we've moved across to there. I think the other thing is, one of the problems we've got is that there aren't enough end users in standards. And so I'm pushing, it's one of my big like passions, to get more end users involved in standards. I think this ivory tower scenario doesn't help people. One of my other standards jobs is I'm overseeing the rewriting of the violent situations PPE standard, which is a British standard for like riot police and prison guards and things like that. So we're rewriting it, and I was speaking to someone from PSNI, so Police Service Northern Ireland, and he's a chief inspector. He's been an operator for like 20 plus years, and I was trying to encourage him to come into the committee, and he said to me, I just don't know like what I bring. And I was like, 20 something years worth of experience on the front line of understanding what your pinch points were. You've got 250 people that work for you that tell you what their problems are. That's everything that we need, because I don't believe that standards should be written by people who are just manufacturers who have interaction with their buyers at end user level, but have never actually worn PPE, have never actually done those jobs. And so that's what I think is a big kind of missing link for people, is understanding like what the difference is. Like how do you procure?
How do we balance that with not excluding those that haven't had the operational experience? I actually had this recently. I was talking to a child psychologist, and it wasn't as dig, but at the end I said, do you have kids yourself? And they said, no. And they were in their 40s. And that kind of took away from the big, long conversation I'd had, which I found really interesting. But then I went, oh, damn, you haven't got any kids yourself, which would have been a little bit more helpful.
Not necessarily.
Maybe it wouldn't have been helpful, but like, I don't know. It seemed to diminish it. And I don't know if that's my romanticism from someone that has kids, because no one, I don't think I've tried to be a good dad, but it's not for me to say if I'm any good or not.
The counter side of that is that you haven't got some of the emotional attachment with having a child, and 100%. Therefore when you're observing things you can observe it in a really scientific way, so I'd counter that a little bit.
100%. No, definitely.
I think you need a mixture. That's the whole point. It's about having diverse voices, diverse experience. So we need manufacturers to tell us why something can or can't be achieved because of a particular process that would be needed, or we need fibre manufacturers and fabric producers to be there to say, actually that can't be achieved with this product or not product, but this, or it can be achieved, or for them to know that this is what the expectation is. And one of the very first standards I was involved in was the British standard for cleaning and maintaining firefighter PPE. And I remember just being in the room.
How clean's clean enough?
Oh yeah, let's not. That's definitely not for me. Thanks. I've got enough on my plate with PPE and procurement. But the point of it was I was the voice in the room. Go, but what do the firefighters need? But like, what do the firefighters need? Like, I don't care actually if your process doesn't achieve this. That's not my issue. Like, if we need this for a firefighter for an operational reason, then that's what the standard has to reflect, which is why I think having it in. And actually, when he did join the committee, he's taken loads from it, and his first meeting was amazing because all the other experts were suddenly like hushed and like listening intently to what he had to say, and I think he realised then the value. So it's really important.
We have seen remarkable benefits from all organisations, but I certainly see a lot with the NFCC working with more academics, because we can also get fooled as like, if I go back to firefighter, when we go back to the clean thing, it's like, well, I can smell the thing. And then someone clever, a toxicologist, chemist, blah, 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 they go, I'll make it smell nice if you like, but it doesn't mean it's clean. And it's having that rigor of the academic and professional support to make sure we're boxing off both ends. So you're right. There's a tremendous value in both sides of it. So when people are hearing all of this and when they're thinking, right, we're about to go into a new procurement model or about to go into a wearer trial, once you've started that, you kind of need to keep it the same and consistent and everything like that. And I imagine a lot of those crucial mistakes are made at the very beginning of it. So if someone was going to reach out to someone like you or to another organization or another professional or another sort of specialist, what's some of the essential things they need to know before they start something like this?
So the first thing is that before you start your procurement process, you need to have this all outlined. You need to know what that process is going to look like so that you can be really transparent in the process that you're going to implement. Where we're working with clients, we've got the specification development prior to the tender process, and we then technically assess the samples that are submitted as part of the tender submission. We have found within that, in fire, police and military contracts, that we have eliminated product before it's gone into wearer trial. We had one example of a glove that was washed 5 times and had shrunk 3 sizes. So we eliminated that before it went in. So having that catch before you're putting someone in. So I kind of see myself as like the guardian of the wearer trial, that you only pass go if you've met all of these criteria. And it's a desk-based, like physical assessment of a product and also like the review of the test reports and the certification and everything as well. And then when you go into wearer trial, one of the mistakes that we've seen in some areas is where you've got 3 tenderers and you've got 3 people and each one is assessing one of those tenderers. You then are only getting individual viewpoints. What you need is for all 3 of them to assess all 3 sets of kit so that they can give you an objective view on the perspective of the 3 of them. Because and we've seen it like in some organizations where they're like, right, in Scunthorpe we're going to test tender A, and in this one we're going to test tender B. And that does 2 things. One is it's not a fair comparison because it might be the people in one location were particularly amenable or not. And also that if it then becomes like, well, that's the Scunthorpe one, that's what they wanted. And actually it's not a very...
But there's also, whether it's police or fire or whatever, they may have a completely different operational turnout layout. Maybe these always go to wildfires. These people will do water. You're giving a water rescue sample of something to someone that doesn't attend water rescue very much, or whatever it might be. There's different cultures, isn't it? And you need those fair comparisons in isolation, but not of just individual things. You need to give them so that they can give their, like you say, that's the point of them giving their comparisons rather than
Yeah, the best way to do it is if there's like a training centre or somewhere where you can bring everyone and oversee it in one location over a week or a couple of weeks. That's the best way to do it because then you can control it. Because otherwise you've got, when you go off for breaks, like, oh, what have you been wearing? Like, and those kind of conversations with external.
Plus, you don't know how the thing's maintained if you put it somewhere else. Like if you tested a torch and someone said, oh, it's rubbish. Well, maybe they put it in their own place. They didn't charge it regularly. They didn't whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And then how did it go? And you're like,
properly?
oh God, it was rubbish actually. Well, I lost it for 3 weeks. And then I didn't charge it. It was rubbish.
And it didn't work, and it failed me because it wasn't working when I needed it.
Failed right in the middle of the job at the crucial moment because it wasn't charged. What a blinder! Who'd have thought that?
Also, I think it's really important to control things. So when you're going into like structural fires or something, or if you're like, I would never trial it in a live environment. So you create.
You can't get consistency. You can't get the same thermic effect. You're not going to have the same heat exposure, whatever.
What happens if there's a failure? If it's not controlled, like how do you deal with that? And like I say, if we've failed stuff that has gone in, like before it's gone into trial, like that's a good step that doesn't happen very often. It's something new that we have been introducing for a lot of clients. Like, so what about all those situations where that hasn't been tested first? Like, we don't know, but for me, if we've approved something for trial and someone gets injured in it, like that's a massive issue. Like and we would do like a full review of it. So I definitely think wearer trial is a massive part of trying 1,000%. To get this right, like as part of the procurement process, and it needs to be built in from the beginning so suppliers know what the expectations are, and you just have to be transparent. The other big misconception, by the way, in procurement is about supplier engagement. Unless you're in a tender process, you can speak to whoever you want about whatever you want for as long as you want. It's only once you go into an official tender process that you can no longer continue the engagement. And
because a lot of places do put up the big wall
Yeah.
Don't they? And just like, no, we can't.
Which is
I know next year we're coming up for tender again, so we can't talk to you. That's next year.
Yeah. As long as that official procurement document hasn't been posted, you can talk to anybody, and you should. We'd really encourage it, because there will be new innovations, particularly on contracts that are like 5 or 10 years old. Like, think about how much changes in the way that you operate, in the risks that you're exposed to, let alone like what technology's developed within textiles, for example. They're lighter weight, they're more breathable, they're got higher like convective heat performance, or whatever it might be.
It's got to be a constant, ongoing, iterative process, hasn't it? Don't just wait until that comes up and then start speaking to people, because you've not developed those relationships. You've not seen the trends develop. So you're better informed when that time comes. Yeah.
And again, that links back to not always asking for what you've always had. And, how do you know if what you've always had is the most state-of-the-art and the most appropriate for your service or your particular risk assessment if you haven't looked at what else is available? And there's lots of different ways you can do it. There's lots of like industry events and exhibitions you can go to, and that kind of thing that will help.
I desperately wish we had more time today, and I want us to continue this conversation. So we'll send it all over. You'll have a listen to it. I'd love to have you on again in the future. There's a lot happening in this area. We first met at the NFCC's PP conference. I have the guilt of meeting incredible people all the time, and it took us a little while to get booked in, because I'm like, God, I need to have a conversation with you. You're fascinating. More people. When you meet someone and you're like, my God, you need to speak to so-and-so, but they'll probably never will speak to them. And then when you repeat it, I'll go, I spoke to this woman, Natalie, and she said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll get it wrong. I'll fumble it because my memory's terrible, and all of our memories are terrible. But if you could capture it like this and go, here's the really interesting person, go and listen to him. It's free. So, because I know there's so much we could have gone into today. If people want to find out a little bit more information, we're going to put some links beneath here. So we've got the inclusive framework and the work that you've done there. Where's the best place for people to find you? Should we direct them to LinkedIn, to your website? Where's the best place? Because there'll be loads of things I'll have failed to ask.
That's fine. We're actually in the process of developing inclusive PPE packages to help people go through the process of like, how do you actually get compliant to this standard? We were talking to a fire and rescue service about menopause, where one of the guys said, like, what does it actually mean, like, in terms of like fit for form, and how are we inclusive and stuff? He said, we knew that we had an issue with like women who were menopausal, so we went out, we bought a load of menopause uniforms, so blouses, whatever else, put it on the shelf, and then nobody took it up. And I said, well, because you created a stigma around it, because I have to come and say I need a menopause blouse. And I was like, what did you actually do? So you made them more breathable, right? Lighter weight, better fitting. Okay, so just for example, if you did that for everyone would benefit, and it wouldn't have to have a big M on it for a big menopause t-shirt. But it would be in everyone's benefit. And so I think
put out some massive comms and go, we've got some more breathable, lightweight uniform options that have just come into service. If you think this is something you'd like to take a look at, please get in contact with stores or whatever.
Or just put it in the specification for your nation wear contract, and have that as the procurement process. So sometimes inclusive PPE falls into that it's too difficult, too expensive, but actually most of the time it isn't, and it just requires a little bit of different thinking.
Yeah. I love that. Right, we're going to wrap it up there. Please send my love to the team. Please send my love to your partner, to your husband. Hope he's enjoying farming out in this beautiful weather. And really look forward to getting another catch up with you again soon.
He's milking 850 cows right now.
Yes, good man. Love him. I'll speak to you soon. Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you took a lot away from that episode. We started the Firefighters podcast to develop, inspire, connect, motivate, represent, and most importantly, celebrate the world of incredible emergency services operators and the wider sector through this series of wide-ranging conversations. We really love creating this podcast and bringing it to so many people. Did you know you can also find these on YouTube? We do a lot of video podcasts now. You can head over to our YouTube page and follow, subscribe there. And as a final ask from us, whatever platform you're on, please rate the podcast. It really helps us as a key performance indicator to reach more and more people. I've been your host, Pete Wakefield. This has been the Firefighters Podcast. And wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, be happy, and where possible, please remember and support your firefighters and first responders. I'll see you next time.